Okay, here we are. So we're talking about parallel computing in the kitchen. So this is sort of a metaphor we've been developing to make, oh, you need to see me. Yeah, this is a metaphor we've been developing because oftentimes people will come to our courses and expect to start using the cluster and think, well, this is a supercomputer, so everything must be super fast. Well, actually, it doesn't quite work that way. That's it's a bit more subtle than that. So after like many years of working here, we've sort of found a way to explain it using a kitchen. And if you look at the video playlist that's here, you see one of us basically going to the kitchen and explaining, like pointing to different things and explaining how this is a computer. But we don't have time to watch all that. Hopefully you could watch before or will watch later, but let's just summarize it a little bit. So first off, what is a computer? What do all the parts do? Like this is why we're here right now, to explain what these are. So on the um, left side is a blade server from a server computer. This is probably part of the old Triton. And on the left side is a desktop computer that has what looks like 4 GPUs in there. So how do these compare? They're actually more similar than you think. So in this metaphor, what are the different parts of a computer? So first off, there's well, in the metaphor, I take the stoves to be the different computer cores. So the stove is where you actually do the computing and you cook stuff. The processor has multiple cores inside of it. So these days, 4 is a pretty typical number for processors for for cores in a processor of a general purpose computer. Um, the people doing the cooking are the processes. So basically, you need some code that's running to actually use the processors and do things. The memory is the counter space. So basically, where you can leave all the stuff lying around and things that happen. The food you're cooking is the data. And you have to do things like move the data from the refrigerator first to the counter and then prepare it and then copy it into the um, pot on the stove to do the actual cooking. Recipes are programs and so on. So this is the main point here. So is a cluster faster than your own computer? So here I have on the left side a about 1.8 kilowatt induction countertop cooker, and on the right side, my stove. So does the stove let you cook something like pasta faster than this induction cooker? And the answer is probably not. Like their power output is really quite comparable. So it might be a little bit faster, but really not much. So why
It
do
can
people
even be
use the
slower, I
stove?
would say.
Yeah, yeah. So why do people use the stove? So once, or actually recently, a few months ago, I had a friend that their stove broke. So they borrowed this induction cooker. And were they happy? So they were not happy because they could only cook one thing at once. And that's the main thing here. The supercomputer lets you do a relatively normal thing, but many things at the same time. So imagine a factory kitchen that has um, hundreds or like 10,000 different stove or burners in it. Then you can start cooking a lot of stuff. So what else? So it's really important when you're doing your cooking to understand the memory hierarchy. So if the data are ingredients, there's different tiers of storage places you can put that. For example, stuff can start in the fridge. And if when you're cooking, you have to go to the fridge to take every single thing you work on, that's pretty slow. But if you take it out of the fridge and put it on your counter close to the stove, then you can do your preparations and stuff a lot faster. And yeah, and managing this sort of data flow is one of the big things on the cluster. Also on your own computer, but it's sort of too small to really notice.
It's also very often that on your own computer you do have a comparatively fast hard disk, which a lot of the compute nodes in a cluster just don't have. So there is no local disk that it can quickly access, and that essentially means that you need to go to something slower on tendency or keep it in memory. There are some machines that have local disks, but even there, if you want to use it, you need to first move your
Mhm.
data over from the fridge to the local disk, kind of.
Yeah, let's see. Is there anything else to talk about? Maybe I won't go over this. You can read it yourself. But the main point is that it's not that much slower to take something the um, from your fridge as it is from the countertop. But on a computer, the processor cache and main memory is many orders of magnitude slower than um, yeah, like the difference there is orders of magnitude. So you really have to start worrying about this. Imagine if every time you needed to get something out of the fridge, it took you several hours to go grab it. That would really change the way you do the cooking, and you need to do much more planning there. This is one of my favorite kitchen or favorite pictures. So what happens when you don't have enough CPU or memory? If you don't have enough processor, then stuff's just slower. You cook it a little bit slower. But once you don't have enough memory, you can't do anything and stuff becomes really slow. And that's why when you get a better kitchen, it's not really more burners you get, it's more counter space. And this is something I wish more people would realize, not mentioning anyone or anything, but yes. So I think let's stop here. Maybe we discuss a little bit before we go to the next part. Um, there.
But
So any questions or comments? Um,
nothing in the slides yet, or in the documents
the notes.
yet. Notes.
Yeah.
But one comment that I give is that um, you might really experience the situation that something runs in a certain time on your local machine, and it's
Mhm.
actually running slower on the cluster
Mhm.
on a single CPU
Mhm.
if it's single CPU.
Yeah.
So most desktop machines are actually pretty fast nowadays if they are not purely office machines.
Mhm.
But
That's a good point. Yes.
Um,
So,
but it's just something I want to
yeah.
mention that yeah,
Yeah.
to lower expectations as to what the cluster can do again, because it's
Yeah.
really you can do more things at the same time. You can run the same computation
Yeah.
a lot of times at the same time compared to your own desktop,
Yeah.
but the computation itself will not be faster.
Yeah. And that's something I think if you go deeper into the slides, you eventually get this. And at least I cover it in the videos.
Mm,
So when you start to use a cluster, you're not a cook anymore. You're not someone that's making one dish on one in one kitchen. Instead, you're becoming the manager of all the chefs. You have to take your problem, divide it into something that 10 or 100 or 1,000 people can do at the same time. You make the script to divide up all the data or all the problems so that all these different cooks are working separately and then recombine things together. And that's why the cluster seems so difficult and interesting. And if you don't need to divide stuff up among lots of people to do it more quickly, then a lot of what we're talking about isn't that important overall. Like it just sort of, you know, it's okay. But when you
And
do, the cluster saves a lot of time.
and one more comment I want to give, because that's also mentioned now in the notes here, but um, it commonly takes quite a bit of effort to go or to make your code actually use multiple CPUs. If the libraries you're using do not under the hood already do that. So it's also often a question of, is it really worth it spending the time to make something work in parallel when you could potentially just run it multiple times for smaller problems? So how you divide things can be important as to getting quick and useful results and how much time to invest into certain parts of the code. And on a general principle, if you can divide your problem into smaller parts, it's way preferable to trying to actually parallelize in code. So rather run the same thing or the almost same thing 50 times than try to implement that this is now using 50 CPUs.
Yeah. There's a question about what's a GPU, and I just really like this picture I got. Not because I eat chickens, but um, so the CPU, the processor, can do basically, and like you can cook anything on the stove. But a GPU is a very specialized cooking appliance. So with this appliance, you can cook one thing, you can do some things in parallel, in high
And very
parallelism.
fast.
So this, I think you could cook maybe 20 chickens at the same time on here. But how many pasta or how much pasta can you make with this chicken cooking device? And the answer is basically nothing. It's not designed for it. So if your problem, like the GPU lets you do something in parallel a lot and very fast, but only certain types of problems can be adapted to the thing that the GPU is made for. And if you haven't adapted the code and put it in the right modes and all that kind of stuff, the GPU will just be, wasted.
Okay,
So
but I
yeah,
think we
but
should
yeah,
go
it's time
on
to go. So
and go towards connecting to a cluster.